Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
Hey there in podcast land. Welcome into another edition of the Bmore Baseball Podcast. I'm Jerry Coleman. He's the former Orioles Hall of Famer, 14-year Major League veteran. He's Mike Bordick, and we're producing brand new content every day on X, Instagram, and Facebook. Bordy, check out our pages at the Bmore Ball Pod and on YouTube, Bmore Ball Pod. Bmore Ball Pod. When you follow us on YouTube, you qualify for a $50 gift card, compliments from our friends at Lido Pizza. Today, episode number 14, we're going to catch up with lifetime Oriole Hall of Famer Jim Palmer. Mike and I also will talk about the return of Charlie Morton and Zach Eflin, and even Trevor Rogers to the rotation. And we'll bring in the doc, Dr. Michael Jacobs, former Orioles team physician, to talk about when we might see Jordan Westburg once again. But first, we bring in our featured guest. He's sponsored by Pappas Seafood. From crab cakes to seafood classics, they'll deliver straight to your door. 4 locations in the Baltimore area, plus nationwide shipping. Order today at pappascrabcakes.com. And we say hello to Jim Palmer. So grateful for Jim to join us once again. Jim, thanks for taking the time. I want to start with Brandon Hyde. He sort of developed this reputation, fair or unfair, and you can respond and opine on it, of yanking pitchers too early. We all remember that Sparky Anderson was known as Captain Hook. I guess it was the hider hook when he was managing the team. Have you noticed a difference with the way Tony Masolino is handling the pitching staff as opposed to Hyde? And what about that label he had?
Well, the starters are pitching better for Tony, so that certainly makes a difference. Listen, I'm doing my notes for the game, and when you look at, the Orioles are 9-16 at home, so they've given up. We changed the configuration. They, a couple 22. They moved it to 398. Mike, you played it when it was 364.
Thank goodness.
20 home runs one year. And I'm not saying that was the reason, but it was hitter friendly. So, the 370-foot fly ball to left center field was a home run. And, I know personally I had a little more room. I mean, it was 309 down the line at Memorial Stadium, but you had some room in left center and right center. So I would have pitched differently. So they make the changes, and, so they've given up 53 home runs this year and only 33 on the road. So maybe will the wall go back and Mr. Splash's zone change? I don't really know, but listen, Brandon Hyde was trying to win games, and I never managed, Peter Angelos asked me 3 times, and I told him, I said, I'm undefeated in the broadcast booth. I have yet to lose one up there. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, Johnny O's is pitching great, or managing great, but if the players don't play well, which is kind of what happened this year, or you make some changes in the offseason and those players aren't pertaining pretty well, but Brandon was trying to win games. He won 91 games last year, and they won 101 last year. And they were the best team in the American League last year until everybody got hurt. Adley had that, 132 July. Westburg breaks his hand. Santander, who, had a great year home run-wise, hit 184 with runners in scoring position the last 2 months of the season, trying to hit home runs. So, you try to hit every ball out of the ballpark, you're going to hit home runs, especially if you're a switch hitter and as strong as he is. But again, clutch hitting kind of avoided him. So, listen, do you ever see a general manager fire himself?
No.
I mean, I listen, and that's not, listen, Mike thought he was making changes that were going to help this club. The irony is, you go out and get Tyler O'Neill. Last year he hit, 213 against righties and over 300 against lefties. This year he's not playing. He's already missed more games than Anthony Santander missed in 3 years. So he's injury prone. Does that mean he's not a good player? I mean, 31 home runs last year, but they made a significant first time they've ever gone over a year for any of the players. So, they thought he would help the team. And he hasn't been able to because he hasn't stayed healthy. Losing Cowser, I looked at Colton Cowser. He's what you want from a number 1 draft choice. He's really good defensively. He's got power, smart guy, good base runner, hustles every play. But I wanted to find out if he could hit lefties, and this would have been the year. And then he slides into first base, I don't know if you ever did that, Bordy, head first slide into first base.
I did. Yeah.
And did you break your hand?
No, I did not.
Okay, well there's the difference. So I was looking forward to seeing, is Colton Cowser going to be a guy that plays every day? You know, we had a great platoon system when Earl Weaver managed the Orioles when you had Renicky and Lowenstein. You know, they did 34 to 40 home runs, and they could both play the outfield and whatever. So platoons do work. But again, I think, you know, you wanted to find out if Cowser can play, and, you know, hopefully he'll be back in a couple of weeks.
Jim, if I could follow up real quickly on something you just said, I wasn't aware that Peter Angelos offered you the managerial job on 3 different occasions. Was it 3 different years or all in the same year? Can you take us through that?
No, it was just 3 different times. And I literally, I mean, I went to lunch with him. David Bernstein was my neighbor. He had sold the duty-free shops. He had invested in the Orioles. And he said Peter would like to have breakfast or dinner or lunch with him. And we went down to Boccaccio's, which is a restaurant eventually he would buy down in Little Italy. And he said, well, I don't like Johnny Oates. And I said, Johnny Oates can really manage. He said, well, he's not good with the press. I said, so we'll get him Andrea Kirby to help him with the press. I mean, this is when Baltimore and Washington was a huge metroplex, 5.5 million people. I said, Peter, and don't ever forget this. And I think he did. You don't want your guys looking across the field and knowing their manager's better than yours. Simple as that. And I said, so be very judicious about who you hire as a manager. And, Johnny, they were 60 and 49 at the time. And I think this might have been the strike year. So, or maybe the year before the strike. So we went through what? We went through Phil Regan, who was a great pitching coach, but manager, and then we went to Lee Mazzilli, and we went to guys that you could look across the field and you say, yeah, maybe their guy's a little bit better. But so he kept asking me, and I always said that, I said, these guys have earned their stripes, and they have. But, I did 14 straight losing years of Oriole baseball. So after 98, I believe, the Orioles went into tailspin. So, he asked me, and that's when I used the line. I said, listen, I'm undefeated up there. I mean, I do my work. Because he said, how come you know what's going to go on? I said, I don't know what's going to go on, but I pay attention. I do my work. I watch the games and so on, whatever. Just kind of like if I wasn't pitching, I was sitting with, 2 or 3 other starters with a couple of outfielders, a couple of infielders, and kind of getting ready to be a broadcaster. We watched the game. We analyzed the game. We had to clean up our language once our massing, but so I just knew that eventually, if I managed, and first of all, I thought there were a lot of guys that were, more highly qualified. And one year, we were running Chick Silverstein, who was our orthopedic doctor, and we went like 11 innings, and we gave up 7 runs. It was 7-7, and in the 11th, I don't know who we were playing. They scored 7 runs. We lose 14-7, and I know Chick's not going to be upstairs, but I figure I'll walk up and see if he's still there. And I knock on the door, and Mrs. Angelos, one of my biggest fans, is sitting there. She goes, he's not talking. And Peter's sitting there like this, and because he's not happy we lost. And I said, well, good, that's what I get paid for. So I walk in, and and this was the year we had signed Matt Wieters, and I said, who's our best young player? And he goes, Matt Wieters. And I said, well, maybe we should get a catching coach. Black glove, black chest protector, never got the sign up. This was before now, they catch from bottom up. The target's below, they drop the glove, you don't see it, maybe you see it, but then you don't. And they think they can steal pitches and so on and whatever. So I said, well, maybe we should do that. I said, another thing, remember when I told you all those guys are in their stripes? I could have done it. I said, I was wrong. And he laughed, and I left and all that. So that's the closest I ever came to being a manager. And, it's a tough business. Look at Brandon Hyde. 2 years ago, he's the manager of the year. Now he's playing golf, and he's going to get back into baseball because, he was when he was with the Marlins, he was like a farm director. And he went to the Cubs because he had all that knowledge and whatever. He's a good guy. He had the respect of his players. And at the end of the day, if you don't play well, you get your manager fired.
Hey, Jim, if you weren't the manager, though, let's just say you were the pitching coach, and let's just say you were the pitching coach today, would you do any drastic changes to readjust maybe a pitching philosophy, or do you think analytics and pitching is kind of established and there's no room for old school?
Well, wait a minute. What's our team ERA at home is 6.17. It's over 6 runs a game. We're 9-16 at home. We're 10-19 on the road. We actually pitch better, but we don't score on the road. 3.5 runs a game. We score 4 1/4. That's down about 3/4 of a run a game at home here. It's a good question. I ran into Cal and I had a big umbrella, so I talked to Cal. He was getting out to do something at the ballpark yesterday. And, well, you played behind Mike Messina?
Yeah.
Okay, so as well as anybody how important it is if a catcher sits low and away, you can maybe cheat a step or two, or if it's a breaking ball or whatever. You can do that if you throw to a target. If you watch the games now, most of the time the glove's in the middle of the plate. Because, Drew French, I said, see, it doesn't seem like they throw to the corners anymore like we did. He goes, well, the average major league pitcher misses his target by 9 to 12 inches. So,
gosh,
well, it's like if you miss the ball by 9 or 12 inches, are you ever going to get any hits? No.
Yeah.
So, and what I tell you, Cal being part of the owner, he had some players, guys with live baseball experience, go down to spring training. Bunbury was there. Ben McDonald was there. Nick Markakis was there. Cal was there. They had a lot of players that had played. And, I asked Drew French because they asked me to go down. Excuse me. And I said, so what will I do? They said, well, you'll watch them, do infield practice, throw bullpens. I said, well, can I suggest maybe they throw the ball low and away? He says, we don't teach that anymore. So to your point, that's what they should do. Because,
oh my God.
Listen, now it's more about velocity and spin. But I pitched with a lot of guys that had velocity, they had spin, and they also had command. They threw the ball. I mean, let's figure the plate's 17 inches. If you have good command, you can take that ball, which is about 2 1/4 or 2.5 inches wide, and I can throw it on the corner. So now this plate has now become 21 inches wide. And again, if the glove is here and I have to move it to here, you don't get as many pitches if the glove's here and I move it here or whatever. And then also, did you ever pitch, Mike? I know you
in high school. Yeah.
Okay. There you go. Did you have a lot of success in the middle of the plate?
No, I didn't have a lot of success. Really.
So good pitchers don't listen. You can overpower guys. Skubal, he could throw it in the middle of the plate, and he's got a great changeup. Blah blah blah. But if you pitch in the middle of the plate, you're usually backing up a base. It's just the way it is. And so if you can stay out of the middle of the plate, yeah, can you spin the ball? What kind of spin is? Hitters told us what our spin rate was.
Yeah.
More of the Bmore Baseball podcast coming right up. At Pappas Restaurants, we've been serving up Maryland's best crab cakes for over 5 decades, and now we make it easier than ever to get your favorites. With 4 restaurants and sports bar locations across Harford County, Baltimore County, and Anne Arundel County, you can stop in for fresh seafood, ice-cold drinks, and wall-to-wall TVs. But if you can't make it in, don't worry. We'll bring Pappas to you. Our new state-of-the-art shipping and commissary location on Bel Air Road in Nottingham means you can pick up fresh-made meals or have our famous crab cakes and seafood shipped anywhere in the country. Dine in, pick up, or ship nationwide. However you Pappas, we've got you covered. Order now at pappascrabcakes.com. It's saving season at Lido Pizza. 99-cent refreshing iced teas for spring and summer, or $6 calzones every Tuesday. There are tons of new deals and rewards for everyone, exclusively at LidoPizza.com or on the Lido Pizza app. Lido Pizza, a local legend since 1955, proud partner of the Baltimore Orioles. Everyone knows Greenmount Station in Hampstead, but did you know that at Greenmount Station you can bet 7 days a week just like you're at the track? With in-person teller windows and state-of-the-art touchscreen kiosks. And with Greenmount Station's brand new Bet Park Sportsbook, you can bet on all other sports as well, wherever you are in Maryland. Spreads, money lines, live bets, props, parlays, and teasers. The Bet Parks Maryland mobile app is now live for Apple and Android devices, so you'll never miss your next big score. Just search for Bet Parks MD in the Apple App Store or on Google Play. 21 and over only. Please play responsibly. For help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Shop Maryland's largest adult use and medical cannabis menu located at 1114 Cathedral Street in Baltimore, with medical delivery available throughout Maryland 7 days a week. Only at Relief Shop. Effective Solutions, your one-stop shop for commercial contracting. Everything from excavation and site development to emergency remediation and restoration. Effective Solutions specializes in many forms of commercial and mixed-use construction. With a dedicated staff and a commitment to quality, Effective Solutions delivers every time.
Yeah. Don't you think cigars Logano is kind of proving all the analytical theorists wrong right now by how he's pitching. He's not blowing guys away with a fastball. As a matter of fact, the only time he strikes guys out is when a split he's on, but he knows how to work both sides of the plate, changes, pitch sequence, keep guys off balance, and he's actually pitching better than anybody.
Well, he is. But Dean Kramer's had like 4 or 5 pretty good starts with a couple of exceptions in there. So the other day I was talking to Ryan O'Hearn. He pulled George Brett's uniform out of his locker because I guess playing with Kansas City, he loved George. He did get 3,400 hits. He is in the Hall of Fame. He said, "How'd you do against this guy?" And he holds up the jersey. And I said, "I helped him get to the Hall of Fame. I gave him singles to left field." And I said, I used to tell our guys, Sammy Stewart, great pitcher. I said, you either want to give him a single left or you want to try to go in, try to be a big ego guy, and he's going to take you into the waterfall. So at the end of the day, and then what Hearn gets 3 hits to left field after we'd had that conversation. Not that he has been doing that all year long, because he's hitting about 350, and he can also hit home runs like he did last night. So at the end of the day, I probably would make some changes, but it has to start in the minor leagues. It has to be where I can just, I played on a lot of great staffs, and George Bamberger was a great pitching coach. He was my minor league guy in A-ball. He came with Earl after I, hurt my arm and came back. And if a guy showed up with an iPad the first day of spring training in Miami and had a tripod, and George would go. He was from Staten Island, so he had certain profane words that were part of his normal language. But if he called you pal, that's when I heard him do it about 5 times. But if he could, listen, pal, he would have turned around and said, listen, pal, I'll let you know when I want to do that. And, you wonder about injuries. They track every pitch from the first pitch you throw in spring training, whatever. I want him to get in shape. Get in shape. Charlie Morton pitched, and again, maybe he pitched some backfield games. He pitched 12 innings. We used to pitch 40. Right. You used to go pitch 7 innings on a couple of occasions, go down, throw in the 8th and the 9th, or pitch 9 inning games at the minor league complex, and you could go extra innings the first day of the season. So, these guys are bigger, stronger. They work out all year. I was sitting with Dean Kramer. I snuck into the locker room because they really don't like us there before opening day last year, and we're sitting on the couch, and I was talking to Kimbrough. Tyler Wells says, what's the most pitches you ever threw? I said, well, I'd say, playoff game 169, next game 171 against the first World Series game in 71. But in the second year I played, I thought I was going to AAA when I was 20, and everybody got hurt in spring training. So I pitched, I'm like 5-inning no-hit innings against the Yankees. And I remember the game because Frank took Al Downing over the scoreboard in Miami into the wind. That was Frank Robinson, and he would end up, hitting 49 home runs in 2 in the World Series to win the Triple Crown. And then the next one was against Jim Maloney, who pitched 3 no-hitters, and he actually singled in a run. I pitched 6 innings, gave up a run. Brooksy took him deep twice. He struck out the first 3 guys. Brooks was hitting 4th homer. Struck out 7 of the next 9 guys. Brooks, the night game in Miami, the lights were horrible. I don't know if you ever had spring training in Miami, but you couldn't see at night. Man. So I go to Boston. Everybody gets hurt. Now I'm starting. So I hit a home run, strike out 11, walk 7, throw 177 pitches. And Harry Perkeen was our pitching. Harry the Cat Perkeen was a little left-hander who had a great career with the Cardinals. They said, Harry, 177 pitches for a 20-year-old. He goes, yeah, we're trying to get that pitch count down into the 140s. So that was the mindset. I know you can get people out. You want to learn about yourself. If you're a pitcher, try to get Rice, Yaz, and who else? And Fisk out in the 9th inning with a 1-run lead the 4th time.
And that sort of leads me to what I wanted to mention. Tarek Skubal, you mentioned him. I mean, last week he threw a complete game shutout. That used to be commonplace back in the day, as you know. You would throw it. Nolan Ryan would
never did it with 93 pitches like he did.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But Greg Maddux would do it. And the common denominator amongst you 3 is Ryan, you, Maddux. Your arms haven't fallen off, and you haven't required multiple Tommy John surgeries since then.
Well, yeah,
could have.
Question. It's funny. You're going to have Mike Jacobs on. I called him we talk from time to time, and when he's not on the golf course, and
Oh, he's watching.
no, I know. So I asked him about lat injuries, it's going to be interesting because now, I didn't even know I had a lat. I knew I had a rotator cuff because I got bicipital tendonitis, curl and cured it in a day, but nobody here could do that back then because Mike Jacobs wasn't our team doctor. He said, put your hands up. It opens it up. It injected it. It was gone. Now, meanwhile, I changed my windup for 2 years and tore my rotator cuff in Pittsfield, Mass, with Cal Ripken Sr. as my manager. I tried to throw a high fastball by Billy Canigliaro, Tony's brother, and I heard everything pop, and I threw a couple of slow curveballs and go, Cal, something's going on here. So, I rehabbed it and, ended up pitching another, 17, 18 years. So I was very fortunate. But I think when you do the weighted balls and you're trying to chase velocity, plus the other thing is the guns, they're 3 to 5 mile per hour faster now because it's out of your hand, not at home plate. Yeah. So I don't know. I just saw a lot of really great pitchers. You talked about it, Maddox, Glavine. The Cardinals are in town. Bruce Mano was our assistant general manager. He went to the Cardinals. He ran their farm system. So he called me and he said, hey, come up and talk to our minor league guys up in Jupiter, Florida. And I lived down in Palm Beach, or might have lived at Juneau back then. But, I lived close by. And I said, yeah, but you got Bob Gibson. He said, well, we want another voice. We hear from Bob Gibson, who's one of the great pitchers of all time. And I said, sure, because he's a great guy. So got all the minor leaguers, and we're in one of the backfields, and we're all kind of kneeling down. And Lou Brock's there, who stole over 900 bases. That's in the Hall of Fame. Bill Campbell was their Double-A pitching coach. Went 17-5 out of the bullpen for the Twins. Next year, stayed 39 games. When you pitched more than one inning, he was one like Raleigh Fingers, one of those guys. So we're talking, and first thing I said was, who's the best pitcher in the National League the last 10, 12 years? They, Schilling and Randy Johnson. I said, no. The last 10 or 12 years, Glavine and Maddox. And I said, so are they hard throwers? And somebody said, no. I said, so what do you think they throw, 90, 91, 92? I said, how many of you guys throw 90, 91, 92? Everybody's hand went up. I said, so what do they do that you can't do? What did Tom Glavine used to say? Why are you guys so good? We throw the ball. We know how to throw the low no-wave strike. And we can throw a changeup off it. And we can field our position. And we can hold runners. And we can bunt. We can do all the things you have to do before the DH in the National League. So I told him, I said, there's the answer. And then I said, listen, you guys ever talk to Lou Brock about pitching? And one of the kids said, well, no, he's a hitter. And I said, he's a Hall of Fame hitter. It's, if BJ Surhoff was still one of our coaches and the guy hit 298 with the runners in scoring position for his career, and he hit 287 against left-handed pitching, and I was a left-handed batter, even if I was right-handed, I would go, BJ, how'd you do it? And we know BJ, you played with him, Mike. He's, intensity. Maybe that's why he's as good as he was. So again, it's I don't know. We got to get back to where you have people that, and again, I'm not trying to denigrate people that haven't played or whatever. Earl Weaver was a great manager. He would always, and he would, he just throw him a slider. He couldn't hit a slider, which is why he never get higher than Double-A ball. But he did drive in 104 runs in Double-A, which he would always remind us of.
Wow.
In fact, I don't know if you read The Last Manager, the book that John Miller. It's actually a really interesting book. It's funny. They said Earl could really hit, which, for a midget, I didn't really think that. Okay. But they said he didn't have a lot of speed. So he was good defensively, but he, didn't have a great arm, didn't have a lot of speed, but he was a pretty good hitter, which he kept reminding us all those years.
They said the same about Buck. Well, you talk about, players that, haven't been around. The Orioles have had a number of injuries this year, not just with their pitching, but position players as well. Do you think there's a good push from this team if they start getting Westberg back and Cowser and maybe Bradish and Wells after the break?
Well, I always thought that with the injuries that they had, and the fact that, they kind of rented Corbin Burns, it's interesting. In the last 2 years, you had a one-year deal with Kyle Gibson. He pitches 192 innings, wins 15 games. They score him 6 runs a game. Burns wins 15 games. They score him 6 runs a game. Kind of tells you how good the offense was for the Orioles over the last couple of years. Well, of course, Mike, they're going to get better. You're going to get some of your players back. Orioles score more runs than any team in baseball on home runs. So, and when you're hitting 208 with runners in scoring position, this is the same team and different players that, 23, they hit 287. So last year they only hit 251, which was right around the league average. So they hit 53 more home runs in 24 than 23, and they scored less runs. So does that tell you something about how important the home run is?
Yeah.
Home run is as important as you think. Now, I know the analytical people like it because when the ball goes out of the ballpark, they know what the end result's going to be. Nobody's going to make a diving play in right center or left center field, or no shortstop's going to go in the hole and make a great play. I understand that, but I loved guys that try to hit home runs because that usually meant that there were more holes in their swing, and you could, if you made your pitches, you could get them out. So but going back to one thought, when I was talking to Dean Kramer when we were talking to Ryan Herm, I said, "You pitch like we used to, threw fastballs on the outside corner until they hit it." I mean, here's a novel approach. Like last night, Brian Baker comes in throwing 97. Now, Nolan Arenado. Now, I've been getting the St. Louis paper for the last month. That's what I try to do. I've been reading the Oakland paper. I've been reading the Seattle Times. Because if I'm doing the games, even though I'm not doing as many games last year, you still want to be prepared. So I've been reading. They moved Arenado, who's got 388 home runs, somewhere in that number. They moved him from 4th to 6th. And he said, "Listen, I don't know if I'll ever be as good as I was." Why is that? Now, the other day, he did hit a bases-loaded triple up the gap in left center field. But he's lost some bat speed. It happens. I don't know if it ever happened to you because you had a really short stroke and all that. But I don't know if it's when you're your pitcher and the radar gun says you used to throw 98 and now you're throwing 93 and then you're throwing 90 or whatever, you have to be – got to figure it out. More first pitch strikes, throw your changeup for strikes versus balls, blah, blah, blah. And, we used to always joke about Earl Weaver's, the Weaver cards. And invariably, it would be a little 3x5 card, and it would say, pitch him high and tight and low and away. That works.
Absolutely.
It works.
Just as good as an iPad.
Right. And watch the way. Now, Maverick Hanley is a little different. He didn't catch last night. We have a young catcher they brought up, Chadwick Trump, not Trump, but Trump, who's been around. He's 30 years old, and it looks like he calls a pretty good game. But Maverick Hanley puts the glove on the corner. But again, he's one of those guys, gives you the target and drops it because they've taught him to bring the ball up. They think they're going to get more strikes, and maybe they do. But again, your team
they don't block balls anymore.
Yeah. Pardon?
They don't block balls anymore. I know that because they're all on one knee.
Well, you had Rick Dempsey on your podcast yet? Talk to him about catching on one knee.
Yeah,
well,
I know he's got his theory.
One of the best young catchers in baseball is Logan O'Hoppe, and we were out there. The Orioles won 2 out of 3 out in Anaheim, and then again, I have a place out there, so I left and I once again I got the Orange County Register. I've been reading it pretty much all year because I knew I was going to do some Angel games. And he went back he said, "I'm better standing up. I'm more athletic." So, but again, hey, listen, all I do is observe.
Hey, we got a lot more ahead with Hall of Famer Jim Palmer, but this portion of the podcast brought to us by Relief Shop. As we go beyond Baltimore, Relief Shop, Baltimore's best adult medical cannabis dispensary with 700 plus unique menu items and home delivery available for medical patients only at Relief Shop.
Yeah.
Well, based on your observations, we're speaking and the Orioles are in last place right now. Do you believe they could be sellers at the trade deadline? Should be trade sellers at the deadline? And who would you deal right now for prospects? Is there one guy?
Well, if Eflin gets healthy, he had a lat problem. So his last 2 games, I think he threw 10 home runs in his first 13 starts, and he threw 7 in his last 2. So that tells me, and he's, listen, he's 6'6", he commands the ball. But, again, I didn't do the game. His last game was in Boston. He threw back-to-back home runs to start the game. Which, that everybody says, well, you never threw a grand slam. The most amazing thing, and I don't know how it happened, I never threw back-to-back home runs. Ever. Now that's hard to do, maybe I walk, I throw a home run, I walk the next guy. I think I was really good at that. But
is that more impressive for you than the grand slam streak?
Oh yeah. How do you not throw back-to-back home runs? It's the big leagues.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go to Boston with Lynn and Rice and Fisk and, Yaz and, George Scott and all those. Yeah, it's easy. Fly balls are home runs in Fenway sometimes. So, yeah, that's the amazing thing. But, yeah, I don't know. We'll see how they do. But Eflin's going to have some value. And plus, he's a free agent and he makes $18 million a year, which, it seems like a lot of money when you're a small market team, even though we spent our salaries went up like 76% last year in the off season. So they did spend some money. It hasn't really worked out, but he'll have a lot of value. I mean, O'Hearn would have a ton of value. There are a lot of guys that are going to have some values. Okay. But anyway, so yeah, Eflin will certainly have some value. There's going to be other guys that, I think will probably have some value. How about Urias?
Yeah.
If you want a utility guy, Gold Glove third baseman. I still remember doing a game in 21 in New York, and I said, you reminded me the way he played at third base that night. I said, you remind me of Brooks Robinson. He knew who Brooks was, and he had a big smile on his face. I don't know if he knew he won 16 straight consecutive Gold Gloves or whatever. But so again, he is smooth over there. You were a great infielder, Mike, but he can pick it over there. So when you get Westberg back, last year was freaky. This year's just a hamstring. So, the whole year, and I'm sure Michael Ash tried everything he did was obviously to do, to be in a positive mode. But, Freddie Gonzalez is no longer your bench coach. He was your bench coach, managed Atlanta, managed Miami. He was with Bobby Cox, who's one of the great managers of all time in the Hall of Fame. So they let him go. They let two of their hitting instructors go. But Schultz, he got a better deal, and he's done a great job over in Minnesota, who's really played well. Ryan Fuller is now the director of hitting for the White Sox. Read a couple of his quotes the other day because we're playing the White Sox this weekend. They sent Andrew Vaughn down, and they said it's going to be a reset. He's got to get the bat back on plane. All good hitters, they can talk about launch angle. If you can hit line drives, this is what this Cardinal team does. They hit line drives. No, they don't hit Charlie Morton's curveball, because they were 2 for 13. But when he's on his game, he throws it 42%, which is exactly what he did the other day, and he had some success. So, so the Orioles made a lot of changes, and Brian Ebel, we all know how great he was. He worked with Richie Van Sel's, one of the great trainers. Richie was president of the, Trainers Association for 25 years or whatever. So they made some changes. Again, they thought that would help the ball club. And I'm looking at a 19-35 record, and that's because of the pitching, and that's because of the injuries. That's for the fact of lack of clutch hitting. And, hopefully, are they going to get better? To answer your question, kind of a circuitous thing. Of course. They're going to get some of their players back, and hopefully we'll find out if Colton Cowser, when he gets back, can hit lefties. Last year he struggled against left-handers, and he didn't hit well with runners in scoring position. And when they had a chance to pinch hit for him in the playoffs with a runner at third and less than 2 outs, he's 5 for 25, and you had Austin Slater sitting on the bench at 4 for 8, and you got him just for this situation against a lefty who hit Colton Cowser. Not only didn't get to run him, he broke his hand. So, that's a freaky thing and all that. Right. So, it's just one of those years where, and thank God I never played on a team that went through this. That in 67, the Orioles were under 500, but I was hurt, so I'm not taking any blame. With 3-1, when I got sent to the minors, because back then, your IAL, what do they call Miami, or now it's Sarasota, the black hole, where you go down there and they you till you get well. Back then, I went to Miami, I went to Elmira, went to AAA. What kind of, did you have a lot of rehab? Yeah, the hot shower in Miami, hot shower. It was a whole different world back then.
More of the Bmore Baseball podcast coming right up. They say it all comes back to your roots, right? At Grassroots, high-quality cannabis is in their nature. From soil to soul, their passion for cannabis and community inspires everything they do. Try your favorite strains from their cultivar library of top-shelf flower, pre-rolls, and concentrates. Whether you're cheering from the stands or chanting for the O's at home, their crafted flower helps you curate the perfect game day. Ask for Grassroots Cannabis at your favorite dispensary in Maryland.
Hello, my name is Reese Friedman, and I'm the daughter of Stephen L. Friedman and Rachel Friedman, and the granddaughter of Michael A. Friedman. Now, the law office of Michael Friedman's firm has been going on for over 35 years. If you or a loved one have been injured or in a serious accident, please call the number right here or email us. Also, we don't want you to hesitate. We're just one phone call away.
Jerry Coleman here. I've been a client of the law offices of Michael A. Friedman for well over 25 years now. From motor vehicle accidents to other tort-related issues, 410-363-6848, or find them on their website at maflaw.com.
Take a swing at a healthier mouth and a better-looking smile with my dental team at Catonsville Dental Care. Catonsville Dental Care is a winning team of caring dental professionals who treat you like family. You will love their clean, friendly office, where your comfort and care are their top priorities. Catonsville Dental Care has more than 2,000 five-star Google reviews and received many awards, such as Top Dentist and Top Workplace. Catonsville Dental Care accepts most insurances and offers convenient hours, before or after work, and some Saturdays too. Mention the Jerry Special for your $149 new patient visit, or receive $500 off your Invisalign treatment. So get off the bench. Call Catonsville Dental Care today.
I'm retired now, but I was an Orioles home run. Grand slam, actually. Took a sweet ride right into the flag court, and it was awesome. Could be awesome for you, too. If you play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery, you could win instantly, or be a contestant of the game and win $500 for being selected, $500 for every Orioles home run, and $5,000 for every grand slam. Sounds like a ball, if you ask me. Enter all season at mdlottery.com.
Jim, I want to ask you about the Hall of Fame in a moment, but your schedule with Matson, it's hard to keep track. I'm trying to figure out when you're doing games and doing series, and I see on social media fans want to know when you're doing games.
Let me
is
see.
Is there a number? Is there a number that and you're active on social media, so you see it out there. Is there a number of games you're doing? Have you cut back your schedule?
Did I cut it back?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
No, to get a 2-year deal, they said you do 50 games. And I could have done more, I think, this year for less money than I made in 1989. So I just didn't think that was. I actually told him I'd do some games for nothing. So, yeah. I mean, I love doing the games. I mean, listen, Mike, you did it. You were terrific. It's funny. Everybody thinks you just show up in the booth, and it's totally different. But if you know baseball, you eventually figure it out. If you work with good people, which I've always been able to. Who was the not Brooks, basketball.
Blake?
No, one of the great. He just retired at 92. Brown.
Brown.
Yeah, he was really good. Yeah, and he goes. He said, "I've just been happy that I've been able to be part of the presentation all these years." And there's something to be said about that. Yeah. I mean, I did the playoff game, the 1-game playoff between the Red Sox and the Yankees in 1978. They said, "Watch the game. If the Yankees win, Reggie will play, and you'll go broadcast with Howard Cosell and Pete Jackson." So that's the Bucky Dent home run game. So every time I see Bucky, I go, "The reason I'm a broadcaster? Thank you, Bucky." And it was Mike Torres, who won 20 games for us, was pitching for the Red Sox. 2-0. Bucky hits the 3-run home run, 3-2, 4-2, 5-2, and then the Red Sox come back, and Gossage comes in and gets the Red Sox out in the ninth. Heart of their Lord, and I go to work, and it didn't really matter what I did. Well, it really didn't matter what I did back then because I was still pitching. But broadcasting is a very great business. It's not like would you go 112 straight games without an error?
110, thanks.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
what happened on the 111th?
I like it. Yeah. Bad play. Bad scorekeeper.
Hey, I have a neighbor in California. He, we're out by the fire pit one night, and he and his dad are coming in, and he said, "I know you're in the Hall of Fame, but my son owns the Guinness World Book of Records for sit-ups. 5,000 and 5,000.
Oh my gosh!
And wait, 5,680 consecutive sit-ups." So I said, "Geez, that's amazing." I said, "Why'd you stop?" And he goes, "Nobody ever asked me that." It's like Forrest Gump. Why did he run for 3 years and then all of a sudden in the middle of New Mexico decide that's enough? So So anyway, so yeah. So listen, I mean, I enjoy doing the games. I get I worked with Brett Hollander last night, who he goes, "Was I okay?" I said, "No, you were better than okay." And I get to work with Jeff Arnold this weekend. I've Ben Wagner. I have Kevin Brown. We all know how good Kevin is. because he tells us every day when he comes to the booth, I'm here, I'm great, and I'm back. No, I thought I was working with him the whole week, and he showed up for one game, and he's off to do some softball games. But so, and then, go back, Jim Hunter and Gary Thorne and Mike Regai and, everybody down the list. So it's been a good run. And lately it's been great because the Orioles are winning this year. Again, I trained for this by losing 14 straight years. Because it's funny, people, they turn the game on. They want the Orioles to do well. Years ago, I was doing the 1988 playoffs and between the Mets and the Dodgers. And first two games were in New York. It was miserable weather. And they come out to L.A. and I'm working with Tim McCarver and Al Michaels. Pretty good guys to work with, I mean, Al's one of the best. And Timmy was taught 4 decades, was a great, great analyst. And the Dodgers lose 3-2. And I come down. I had a friend I was staying with on the beach and go down and play volleyball early in the morning. And one of the leatherbacks, guys have been there like 50 years with, backs are like leather. Lenny goes, gee, I think that was off last night. You and Al and Tim. I said, really? I thought we covered everything. It was a great game, 1-run game. He said, no. So anyway, I didn't think much about it. So the Dodgers win the next night, 9-4. I go down to play volleyball. He says, boy, you were great. I said, you mean maybe because your team won? He goes, oh, yeah, never thought of that. So imagine doing 14 straight years of losing baseball for the Orioles.
Tough.
432 finishes and things like that. So, you enjoy the game. I mean, listen, my life has been baseball, so I still enjoy it. I know I'm getting older, which is a good thing, but it's just the way it is.
Yeah, I know my time with you, Jim, as a player and then as a colleague. The first thing you said to me was, remember what you did as a player and hang your hat on your preparation. And, even to this day, I know you put in your time to prepare and be the ultimate pro. And I admire you for that and have the ultimate respect. So thank you for everything, you've done for the Orioles and to help me as well.
Well, thanks. I mean, that's those are the teams I played on, and, people would say, Joe Biden back in 2009 came up and, he throws out the first pitch and, he's got a couple of Secret Service guys and Gary Thorne and I go in the back. He's got the Navy hat on and he says, I used to come down and see you play when I was senator in Delaware. And he said, you were really good, congratulations on getting the Hall of Fame. And I said, Mr. Vice President, I said, I didn't get there by myself. I played with some of the greatest players that ever played. And I did. I mean, when you're 19, you get to the big leagues and they say, I want you to room with this Robin Roberts guy who had 270 wins at the time on his way to Cooperstown. And then your shortstop's Louis Aparicio. And you got this third baseman over there, Brooks Robinson guy that's on his way to 16 straight gold gloves and MVPs. and I mean, won the MVP the year before I got there, but then since he never did it again, he would just do it in the World Series of the playoffs, which was very timely. Boog Powell, won an MVP in 70, was second in 69. I played with some of the best players. So I told Joe Biden that, and he said, yeah. And he said, another thing is, if I had hair like you, I would have been president. And then Don DiAgostino, who was, our producer for 17 years, one of the best ever. And I've worked with a lot of people. She goes, do you realize you just took the Vice President of the United States hat off? I said, no, I just doffed it a little bit. I didn't, it's kind of like Jerry's hat right there.
At least the Secret Service left you alone, though. They didn't come and charge you.
Well, no, they didn't. So it's been a great run. And, we'll see. I don't know if I'm coming back next year, but we'll see how long it lasts. And, and back to your original point, I actually, when I looked at this season, when you lose Burns, because you kind of knew he was going to go wherever the money was, and happened that he got over a couple $100 million, even though the Orioles made a nice offer. He's going to go back to where he lives in Arizona. I thought with all the injuries they had, the Tommy John for Bradish, and Tyler Wells, who's doing his bullpens, they'll be back. So 2026, that's to me is going to be the year. And a lot of times, Michael is a pretty smart guy. Sometimes you realize, okay, I need to make some changes. You did it as a hitter. I did it as a pitcher. Managers do it. Earl Weaver was the most loyal guy in the world. And when Don Buford, who was the best leadoff guy in baseball, all of a sudden hitting 209, and I got higher than him. He goes, and he'd be leaving his house up in Perry Hall, and he said, I can't play Buford. And then he'd remember all the things he did for him, all the home runs and on base percentage, and he put him in the lineup. And then finally he said, I need to make some changes. So, this may be the transition year for the Orioles. Well, we'll find out if some of the young players like Hurstad, who's struggling. I mean, he's got to make some changes. Maybe Mayo comes back up again. Maybe Basayo, I don't think he's going to catch with Adley's on the ball club, but maybe he's our DH, So, maybe you'll find out. And if you look at 88, the Orioles lose the first 21. 89, they went to the last weekend, up into Toronto, up with a chance to win because they found out a lot of the young players, how they could play at the end of 88 and then, put a great run on. So maybe that'll be this year. Hopefully, they'll have, a streak. I don't know if they have enough pitching because I played on a team in 74, Bordy. We were 8 games out in late August and we won 28 of the last 34. Pitched 5 straight shutouts. How about having a team ERA of 207 for the whole month of September?
Yeah, that's good.
So
good timing.
Yeah. Well, no, but I'm, again, I don't know if the Orioles, but I do know that the Orioles can pitch better than a 6.17 ERA at home because they're better than that. And the other thing is, Drew French is a young pitching coach. He did a great job last year, considering all the injuries. For them to win 91 games. So it's not always about a coaching. It's the collective stuff. And you guys know as well as I do that, you have to play, John Lowenstein, Brother Lowe used to always say, you got to play in concert, and if part of the orchestra is out of tune, you don't have a chance to win. And this year it's really a combination. There's a number of pieces of the orchestra that are a little bit off key, and maybe that'll change, hopefully.
Jim, I did want to mention the Hall of Fame. It's a place where you've been enshrined for a long time, and now it seems like they're opening up the doors again after some lobbying from Pete Rose to guys back in last couple of centuries. Is there one guy that they should keep out permanently in your mind? I mean, again, it seems like the doors are wide open now.
Yeah, well, they are. I mean, I didn't vote for myself, by the way,
Are you allowed to?
No, that's the point. Listen, I'm happy I'm in there. I don't set the rules. I did do the Bob Costas show back in 2005 with Pete Rose and John McEnroe. And, they gave us a list of questions, too much bling in the NBA and, we need to get more fans. And obviously kind of a racist thing. We need more white fans to come see, blah, 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 blah. First question out of Bob's on HBO out of his mouth was, hey, Jim, you're in the Hall of Fame. What do you think about Pete, who's sitting here? And I said, well, listen, we all know how great a player Pete Rose was. Terry Crowley, one of the great, you had him as your hitting instructor. You want to fix the hitters? Maybe have Crow as a consultant because he's that good. But, he played with him. He said Pete played every at bat like it was the seventh game of a World Series and you're down by a run. And, that's how he got over 4,200 hits, whatever it was, 4,256 hits or broke Ty Cobb's record. But so I turned to Pete and I said, listen, if you profess to love the game as much as you say you do, when the commissioner gave you a chance to atone for your mistakes, I would have been on my hands and knees and I would have gone to Bart Giamatti and said, well, what do I have to do? If it was that important. Now, I think that he was a gambling addict and everything indicated. So John McEnroe says, well, when's the last, I thought I was at an intervention, but John goes, when's the last time you made an illegal bet? He goes, where's 2005 or something like that? He goes, 1987. And I go, wait a minute. I played golf down at Audio. And they said he used to bet on every football game in the weekend and all that. So that was Pete. But maybe that's what maybe made him as good a player as he was, because he was, what's that movie, Against All Odds, with Jeff Bridges, maybe he just felt that's the way he had to do it. But he was a great player. So I don't know. I don't know if the veteran, I know there's some people that are fellow Hall of Famers that don't like what he did, but we all recognize how good a player he was. And, again, I don't make the rules. Barry Bonds, he won 3 MVPs before he started doing whatever he was doing, so still one of the greatest players ever. Roger Clemens won 355 games, something like that. 7 Cy Young, so I don't know. I mean, I'm just happy that they let me in. They haven't taken my what do they call it? Plaque or whatever they call it off the wall yet. One of the do I have 2 minutes to tell you a story?
Absolutely. It's a podcast. We're free and long form, Jim.
I have two grandkids down in Texas. So Henry now he just turned 18 along with Max. So, Henry's going over to Arkansas to start college next year. And when he's like 10, he's going to we're going down to Dallas. It's 102 degrees. We have an off day. And I called Kelly, my youngest daughter, and I said, hey, I'm going to be in town. I said, why don't we have lunch? And she said, well, Henry's going to have his first pitching and hitting lesson tomorrow with, who was the guy, the catcher? He caught from Milwaukee, had 58 doubles. He was catching for the Rangers. Mine escapes me. But his brother was a former minor league pitcher who is now giving lessons in Dallas. And they did it indoors, so it wasn't 102 outside. LaCroix, David LaCroix, and his brother, was catching for the Rangers. So I go in there, and Kelly says, hey, go down there and what? I said, no, I'll just talk to you and all that. And she said, no, I told David you used to, you were a baseball player. So anyway, I'm going down, and Henry's 10. He's, hits left-handed. He's hitting off a tee, and it's a really nice swing. And I had watched an MLB. I felt like I was Tom Davis for a second, and he goes to sleep with MLB channel on, So I watched it, and told me he was talking like, with 600 and 8 or 9 home runs or whatever it is. He's talking about how he preset his hands, and Bryce Harper was doing it. So I'm looking through the net, and I said, do you ever watch MLB? I said, there's a nice thing about kind of getting in a good hitting position. And he said, no, I'm too busy. I do a lot of teaching and all that. And I said, yeah, I didn't say anything. So finally, about really 2 or 3 minutes later, he says, hey, do you think you could teach a 10-year-old how to hit? And I said, well, I've been around the game for, 50 years. He said, what do you mean, as a fan? I said, no, I played. And he said, it's just like a comedy routine. He goes, I said, no, I played. He said, you played? You mean professionally? I said, yeah, I played for the Orioles for almost 20 years. He goes, were you any good? And I said, well, that little town up in upstate New York where they have the Baseball Hall of Fame. I said, somehow they put my plaque on the wall. So he comes running over, and he goes, oh, yeah, Kelly told me your dad played baseball. So now he gets better because now he goes down. Henry's going to do a pitching lesson, right? So he's trying to get him to kind of stand up. He's left-handed, collect his things, stay over the rubber. Kind of what Morton said he did the other day. He felt like he had a touch. Stay over and then throw. Well, Henry's 10. He doesn't dance. So he had a drill where you have your front leg thing. You come back and you set yourself and then you throw. So I said, David, why don't you get him on they had like a fake rubber. I said, why don't you mound? I said, why don't you let him do that drill? I really like that drill. I could care less about the drill. But anyway, so all of a sudden Henry takes a big step, comes back. Now all of a sudden he can gather because his weight's where it should be on his back leg, and he goes. And so the next day I go out to the ballpark, and his brother he's not having a great year for the Rangers. And I said, it's down to 98, so I'm down on the field early. And I said, I go, hey, but I bet your brother. He goes, oh, yeah, I heard. I heard. I said, and I bet he's telling you how to hit, isn't he? So it was one of the most amazing things. It was like, oh, yeah, did you play a little bit? Yeah, 20 years. Yeah. Teach a kid. That'd be like
your baseball card.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, after that lesson, we go to dinner in a little town outside of Trophy Club in Texas, which is by Arlington. And Henry goes, hey, we got to go to this card shop. He knows that you're my uncle. So the guy's down there looking for cards. And I said, I walk in, he can't see me. I go, by the way, you have any Jim Palmer cards? And all of a sudden he looks up and he goes, I can't tell you exactly what he says. Holy. He said, oh, I sold out. I said, well, that's a good thing, at least for your shop and all that.
Nice.
Great story.
Yeah.
Nice.
He should have been a baseball player. He played football, hurt his shoulder. So, but boy, he could run. And he's left-handed, What did Pete Rose say about left-handed pitchers? If you can breathe and you're left-handed, you can pitch in the big leagues.
Nice.
Jim, so many great stories. We're very appreciative of your time. We know you got to get ready for a game.
No, I got to go to the gym. I got to go. Ken, I went over like Sunday when I got back on Saturday night. I go over. I guess the Merritt down there got hit by the tornado, so I didn't realize because I just did some cardio stuff and there's some benches, so I did some weights and they have a rowing machine there and all that. So yesterday I kind of look up the stairs and there's a big screen. Apparently the water sprinklers went on. So they're actually the pool works. So if you belong to the Merritt and you want to go swimming, they have two pools, one on the roof, and they have an Olympic pool downstairs. But apparently they had some damage with the tornado.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, next time you work out in a raincoat, I guess.
It's really good. It's like in the third grade, I went to my daughter's show and tell class, and the teacher said, next time, because I caused them a commotion because I played for the Orioles, she goes, "Can you wear a raincoat so they won't know who you are?" I said, "Yeah, I'll do that."
It's a good disguise.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so is underwear.
That's true. You get tired of people bringing that up all the time nowadays.
Well, that's why I brought it up.
Yeah. It's only been 50 years.
It sent my kids to college. I mean, I would have had to ask for more money to be posed in my underwear if you had to pay a tuition now.
Yeah.
What if they came to you now with a gigantic offer?
Well, they are having their 100th and something anniversary this year. So I've already talked to them.
Nice.
Hey, Jim, we really do appreciate you taking
Oh, you're welcome.
Let's move on to For the Birds, sponsored by the Maryland Lottery. Playing the Maryland Lottery responsibly means knowing what's true and what's not about your favorite games. Learn the facts and the myths at mdlottery.com. And please, as always, play responsibly. Just right off Jim Palmer talking about pitching and this rotation rebound. We really didn't go in depth to all the guys that have come back. Trevor Rogers, a pleasant surprise. You mentioned Zach Eflin. Charlie Morton, Uncle Charlie seems like he has found a little bit of success. But, was that a coincidence? They had their first 3-game win streak of the season.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think, over time, thank goodness for the $15 million contract, and thank goodness for lack of depth in the organization, or Charlie Morton would not have had this opportunity to be extended and actually find himself again in the Oriole bullpen and come out with his first quality start of the season. So, I think hopefully Morton now can get on a nice roll. It sounds like he's all about that vibe or that feel on the mound, and he's starting to feel it, he says. Sagano is going to be, I think, the most consistent pitcher for the Orioles all season long. He just executes his pitches very well. He knows how to keep it out of the heart of the plate. When he gives up a home run, it's typically a solo shot, and he knows how to get into the middle of the ball game. So I think he's going to give this team a chance to win. Dean Kramer, he got rid of his worst month of the season, and this is historic now in his career. That first month of April, man, he should just jump into May and start in May or June, because he's starting to settle in and look like, a pretty good piece of this. So there's more consistency, and I think the key to this rotation, kind of a reset, if you will, is just give the offense a chance, man. Yeah, they're not plugging on all cylinders right now, but they're going to get some pieces back with Kauser and Westberg. That's going to bolster the offense a little bit. And I think it's their offense that's really going to help propel them and maybe give them a nice push through the All-Star break. And then let's keep our fingers crossed for the second half of the season, get a few more guys out of the MASH unit and onto the field.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Bradish or Rodriguez are walking through that door anytime soon. So that's why it's so important to have the pitchers we just talked about. I agree.
Absolutely.
All right. Can we rock? Let's get to What's Up, Doc. What's Up, Doc is sponsored now by the law offices of Michael A. Friedman, my personal attorneys for over 25 years. There's always a live person available when you call the law offices of Michael A. Friedman at 410-363-6848. All right, Doc, Jordan Westberg remains sidelined. He has been out since April the 26th with this left hamstring strain. It included a setback during his rehab. How damaging can a setback be during the course of rehab of a hamstring?
Well, again, there's a mental aspect that I think takes a big toll when you're anxious to get back in and the team's struggling a bit. And physically, we don't know the degree. As you know, in general, muscle pulls are grades 1, 2, or 3. And a grade 3 is where the muscle completely rips apart. And I've had a couple players who came back. Actually, one was Delano DeShields, who injured it earlier in his career. And even though he missed some time and he had a palpable defect in actually his quadriceps, but he was still a speed guy. So you can recover you have more than one hamstring, and frankly, you sacrifice one sometimes when you reconstruct tendons and joints. So he can come back to be 100%, but it's obvious he's got a grade 2, at least, injury, and it's obvious that he feels he can't play with it. And sometimes when you re-injure it, you got to reset the clock to day 1. So it would appear that he had a kind of injury that you really have to go backwards on. And to make an analogy, as you saw over the weekend, they talked about Bregman injuring his quadriceps muscle, which he did before. And I think they said he missed 50 games, if I'm not mistaken, with it the first time. Wow. And your quad is the opposite muscle to your hamstring. It's multi-layered. And so I think you got to assume he's got a grade 2 injury, and he may have either re-injured it or made it worse as part of his rehab program. So it sounds like this is going to be a long-term problem. The good news is, and obviously I was listening to talk to the great Jim Palmer, even if he was playing, he really couldn't be playing any better than Urias has been playing. So having Urias as a backup would be great, but Urias has been arguably with O'Hearn our best players. Yeah. So it's strangely enough, I don't think his injury has hurt the team as much as you might have thought, given how well Urias has played, unless you feel otherwise.
No, I agree. Urias is playing great. One of the most undervalued players I think the Orioles have had over the last few seasons. But I want to move over to the pitching. We talked about a little bit of a reset here with the rotation, but, there's a piece that's been very versatile and valuable to this team. At least he was last year, and Albert Suarez. And he went on that 60-day IL with that lat problem, that subscapularis, and we haven't heard much about him. What do you think's going on with Suarez? Is it a lot worse than we think, or is he just biding his time to heal?
Well, the subscap is in the front of the shoulder. It's not where your lat is, and it's a relatively unusual injury. And again, the MRI must have demonstrated a pretty significant injury there. And you really can't pitch if your subscap is painful or partially torn. To be honest with you, I never really had to deal with a bad subscap injury. I've had some mild ones that resolved in maybe 4 weeks. But I'm assuming, again, that's a pretty significant injury. And as you know, Suarez seems to be one of those guys who would go out and throw however many pitches as you wanted and didn't complain a whole lot. So my suspicion is it was bothering him for a while. My suspicion is he didn't come into the training room. He just kind of sucked it up because he didn't want to be put down, and that as a result, his failure to be more proactive may have caused him to re-injure this more than you might expect. And it's clear he's down for a long time because they're going to have to be very careful when they fire him back up. So I really wouldn't count on him, frankly. I don't even know if he's going to be available effectively for the whole season the way that's going.
Wow. Dr. Michael Jacobs, who got a great testimonial from the great Jim Palmer during the podcast here.
Well, I can't let Palmer off the hook. He obviously is one of the great pitchers of all time. I think he and Tim McCarver are the greatest two color guys who were ex-players. But I do have to use my know-it-all mentality to comment. You need to tell Jim the word is not midget anymore. He can't call Weaver a midget. The word is little people, okay?
I didn't want to interrupt his rant about Earl Weaver, Doc.
He has to stop using the word midget. It's not socially acceptable.
No,
I wish you would correct him on that, okay?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Michael Jacobs. As always, look forward to hearing from you on Overtime as well with Chip Franklin. Thanks to all our sponsors. We really appreciate their support, including these people.
They say it all comes back to your roots, right? At Grassroots, high-quality cannabis is in their nature. From soil to soul, their passion for cannabis and community inspires everything they do. Try your favorite strains from their cultivar library of top-shelf flower, pre-rolls, and concentrates. Whether you're cheering from the stands or chanting for the O's at home, their crafted flower helps you curate the perfect game day. Ask for grassroots cannabis at your favorite dispensary in Maryland. Take a swing at a healthier mouth and a better-looking smile with my dental team at Catonsville Dental Care. Catonsville Dental Care is a winning team of caring dental professionals who treat you like family. You will love their clean, friendly office where your comfort and care are their top priorities. Catonsville Dental Care has more than 2,000 five-star Google reviews and received many awards, such as Top Dentist and Top Workplace. Catonsville Dental Care accepts most insurances and offers convenient hours, before or after work, and some Saturdays too. Mention the Jerry Special for your $149 new patient visit, or receive $500 off your Invisalign treatment. So get off the bench. Call Catonsville Dental Care today.
Hello, my name is Reese Friedman, and I'm the daughter of Stephen L. Friedman and Rachel Friedman, and the granddaughter of Michael A. Friedman. Now, the law office of Michael Friedman's firm has been going on for over 35 years. If you or a loved one have been injured or in a serious accident, please call the number right here or email us. Also, we don't want you to hesitate. We're just one phone call away.
Jerry Coleman here. I've been a client of the law offices of Michael A. Friedman for well over 25 years now. From motor vehicle accidents to other tort-related issues, 410-363-6848, or find them on their website at maflaw.com.
I'm retired now, but I was an Orioles home run. Grand slam, actually. Took a sweet ride right into the flag court, and it was awesome. Could be awesome for you, too. If you play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery, you could win instantly, or be a contestant of the game and win $500 for being selected, $500 for every Orioles home run, and $5,000 for every Grand Slam. Sounds like a ball, if you ask me. Enter all season at mdlottery.com.
At Pappas Restaurants, we've been serving up Maryland's best crab cakes for over 5 decades, and now we make it easier than ever to get your favorites. With 4 restaurants and sports bar locations across Harford County, Baltimore County, and Anne Arundel County, you can stop in for fresh seafood, ice-cold drinks, and wall-to-wall TVs. But if you can't make it in, don't worry. We'll bring Pappas to you. Our new state-of-the-art shipping and commissary location on Bel Air Road in Nottingham means you can pick up fresh-made meals or have our famous crab cakes and seafood shipped anywhere in the country. Dine in, pick up, or ship nationwide. However you Pappas, we've got you covered. Order now at pappascrabcakes.com. It's saving season at Lido Pizza. 99-cent refreshing iced teas for spring and summer, or $6 calzones every Tuesday. There are tons of new deals and rewards for everyone, exclusively at LidoPizza.com or on the Lido Pizza app. Lido Pizza, a local legend since 1955, proud partner of the Baltimore Orioles. Everyone knows Greenmount Station in Hampstead, but did you know that at Greenmount Station you can bet 7 days a week just like you're at the track? With in-person teller windows and state-of-the-art touchscreen kiosks. And with Greenmount Station's brand new Bet Park Sportsbook, you can bet on all other sports as well, wherever you are in Maryland. Spreads, money lines, live bets, props, parlays, and teasers. The Bet Parks Maryland mobile app is now live for Apple and Android devices, so you'll never miss your next big score. Just search for Bet Parks MD in the Apple App Store or on Google Play. 21 and over only. Please play responsibly. For help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Shop Maryland's largest adult use and medical cannabis menu located at 1114 Cathedral Street in Baltimore, with medical delivery available throughout Maryland 7 days a week. Only at Relief Shop. Effective Solutions, your one-stop shop for commercial contracting. Everything from excavation and site development to emergency remediation and restoration. Effective Solutions specializes in many forms of commercial and mixed-use construction. With a dedicated staff and a commitment to quality, Effective Solutions delivers every time.
Thanks to senior executive producer Chip Franklin for putting this latest episode together. Chip has a photographic memory. Unfortunately, it's Kodak style, so it's a little outdated. Until next week, be kind, be real, and make sure to be back for another episode. And we got a doozy next week. It could be a non-baseball guest exclusive. It will be right here on the Bmore Baseball Podcast.
Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.